Chapter 13, Part 1 of Bel Ami, or The History of a Scoundrel. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Bel Ami, or The History of a Scoundrel, by Guy de Maupassant. Translator unknown. Chapter 13. Madame de Marelle, Part 1. Autumn had come. The Duroys had spent the entire summer in Paris, leading a vigorous campaign in La Vie Française in favor of the new cabinet. Although it was only the early part of October, the Chamber was about to resume its sessions, for affairs in Morocco were becoming menacing. The celebrated speech made by Count de Lambert-Sarrazin had furnished Duroy with material for 10 articles on the Algerian colony. La Vie Française had gained considerable prestige by its connection with the power. It was the first to give political news, and every newspaper in Paris and the provinces sought information from it. It was quoted, feared, and began to be respected. It was no longer the organ of a group of political intriguers, but the avowed mouthpiece of the cabinet. La Roche-Mathieu was the soul of the journal, and Duroy his speaking trumpet. Monsieur Walter retired discreetly into the background. Madeleine's salon became an influential center in which several members of the cabinet met every week. The president of the council had even dined there twice. The minister of foreign affairs was quite at home at the Duroys. He came at any hour, bringing dispatches or information, which he dictated either to the husband or wife as if they were his secretaries. After the minister had departed, when Duroy was alone with Madeleine, he uttered threats and insinuations against the parvenu, as he called him. His wife simply shrugged her shoulders scornfully, repeating, "Become a minister, and you can do the same. Until then, be silent." His reply was, "No one knows of what I am capable. Perhaps they will find out some day." She answered philosophically, "He who lives will see." The morning of the reopening of the chamber, Duroy lunched with La Roche-Mathieu in order to receive instructions from him, before the session, for a political article the following day in La Vie Française, which was to be a sort of official declaration of the plans of the cabinet. After listening to La Roche-Mathieu's eloquence for some time, with jealousy in his heart, Duroy sauntered slowly toward the office to commence his work, for he had nothing to do until 4 o'clock, at which hour he was to meet Madame de Marelle at Rue de Constantinople. They met there regularly twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. On entering the office, he was handed a sealed dispatch. It was from Madame Walter and read thus: "It is absolutely necessary that I should see you today. It is important. Expect me at 2 o'clock at Rue de Constantinople. I can render you a great service. Your friend until death, Virginie." He exclaimed, "Heavens, what a bore!" and left the office at once, too much annoyed to work. For 6 weeks he had ineffectually tried to break with Madame Walter. At 3 successive meetings, she had been a prey to remorse, and had overwhelmed her lover with reproaches. Angered by those scenes, and already weary of the dramatic woman, he had simply avoided her, hoping that the affair would end in that way. But she persecuted him with her affection, summoned him at all times by telegrams to meet her at street corners, in shops or public gardens. She was very different from what he had fancied she would be, trying to attract him by actions ridiculous in one of her age. It disgusted him to hear her call him my rat, my dog, my treasure, my jewel, my bluebird, and to see her assume a kind of childish modesty when he approached. It seemed to him that, being the mother of a family, a woman of the world, she should have been more sedate and have yielded, with tears if she chose, but with the tears of a Dido and not of a Juliette. He never heard her call him little one or baby without wishing to reply old woman, or to take his hat with an oath and leave the room. At first they had often met at Rue de Constantinople, but Duroy, who feared an encounter with Madame de Marelle, invented 1,001 pretexts in order to avoid that rendezvous. He was therefore obliged to either lunch or dine at her house daily, when she would clasp his hand under cover of the table, or offer him her lips behind the doors. Above all, Georges enjoyed being thrown so much in contact with Suzanne. She made sport of everything and everybody with cutting appropriateness. At length, however, he began to feel an unconquerable repugnance to the love lavished upon him by the mother. He could no longer see her, hear her, nor think of her without anger. He ceased calling upon her, replying to her letters and yielding to her appeals. She finally divined that he no longer loved her, and the discovery caused her unutterable anguish. But she watched him, followed him in a cab with drawn blinds to the office, to his house, in the hope of seeing him pass by. He would have liked to strangle her, but he controlled himself on account of his position on La Vie Francaise, and he endeavored by means of coldness, and even at times harsh words, to make her comprehend that all was at an end between them. Then, too, she persisted in devising ruses for summoning him to Rue de Constantinople, and he was in constant fear that the two women would some day meet face to face at the door. On the other hand, his affection for Madame de Marelle had increased during the summer. They were both bohemians by nature. They took excursions together to Argenteuil, Bougival, Maison, and Poissy. And when he was forced to return and dine at Madame Walter's, he detested his mature mistress more thoroughly, as he recalled the youthful one he had just left. He was congratulating himself upon having freed himself almost entirely from the former's clutches when he received the telegram above mentioned. He reread it as he walked along. He thought, "What does that old owl want with me? I am certain she has nothing to tell me except that she adores me. However, I will see. Perhaps there is some truth in it. Clotilde is coming at 4. I must get rid of the other one at 3 or soon after, provided they do not meet. What jades women are! As he uttered those words, he was reminded of his wife, who was the only one who did not torment him. She lived by his side and seemed to love him very much at the proper time, for she never permitted anything to interfere with her ordinary occupations of life. He strolled toward the appointed place of meeting, mentally cursing Madame Walter. I will receive her in such a manner